people that created the show South Park just signed this crazy deal for like $1.5 billion. Did you see that? I don't know if anybody saw that, but they signed this deal with Paramount, and I'm always listening to the financial news every day. I like to keep up with everything that's happening in the world of economics and money, and I just thought that was really fascinating. I said, man, this is so crazy. This show that started off as like this really cringe-ish show. It was and I say cringe because they were getting in trouble constantly for the episodes and stuff like that. And it's really cool that now they become mainstream and they're making money and they're doing edgy content. They had never held anything back. And I just love, I'm a big fan of South Park. So anyway, so they just signed this renewal deal with Paramount for $1.5 billion. And this was after they had finished completing another deal for $500 million. So these guys have been definitely in the hundreds of millions in terms of net worth and probably billionaires for quite a long time. And so why am I bringing this up? Well, I wanted to bring this up because, and I did a short little piece about it today on my Instagram. My Instagram is Dr. Boyce Finance, and but I wanted to dig a little deeper into it. It's because I think that stuff like this really is the kind of thing that we should talk to our kids about. Because really, here's the goal. The long-term goal is this for all B1 people anyway, all B1 Black First people. I hope that you agree with me that our goal should be to become controllers, captains of our economic destiny, to also have stronger families, healthy relationships with each other, mental health, physical health, all the things, right? So if you are B1 and you want your kids to win, first thing you got to do is you got to liberate them from the grip of capitalism. In fact, actually, with capitalism, even the word capitalism is interesting because I mentioned to you all, a lot of people will say that I'm a black capitalist. And I say, no, I'm not a black capitalist. I don't want to be a black capitalist. I believe in black free enterprise. I believe in black investing. I believe in black wealth. I believe in black ownership. But I'm not a capitalist because capitalism comes with a lot of baggage. And I actually am going to do a very specific lecture on that to understand the distinction because I realized over time that my relationship with capitalism is much deeper because I studied it for so many years working on my doctorate. And there's nuances to capitalism and variations of capitalism that I think you want to be really careful about, right? So when someone says black capitalism, and I think about my good friend John Hope Bryant, I saw him give a speech and he said, he was saying that Black Lives Matter and Black capitalism matters. And I said, "Ooh, let's figure that out because we got to be real careful. We got to be real careful because when you talk about capitalism, you're talking about a system that led to slavery. That's a fact. When you talk about capitalism, you're talking about a system that has created just an enormous amount of inequality in America. The gap between the rich and the poor is horrendous. You've got guys like Elon Musk running around here with $400 billion in worth, and then he's stepping over homeless people on his way to the office every day. I don't think that's right. That is, I don't know. Tell me if you agree with that. That Elon Musk can still be a rich man and we could still make sure everybody eats, right? Do we agree? Am I crazy? Am I being extreme when I say that? Is that a radical idea, right? Or you also have scenarios, for example, where there are some places capitalism just does not belong. Like in the healthcare system, you have people that die. You have probably about 1 million people that die every year in the United States because they can't afford their medication. Tell me if that's crazy. Can we agree on that? That people should not die because they couldn't afford the pill? Is that okay? Can we so maybe we can align on some big picture issues and say, okay, as we pursue free enterprise, as we pursue wealth, we're not going to fall for the traps that come with Americanized capitalism, right? Capitalism is a little bit like things like feminism, right? There's healthy feminism, and then there's toxic feminism. Masculinity, there's healthy masculinity, and then there's toxic masculinity, right? Healthy masculinity means I provide and protect and I achieve goals, but toxic masculinity, those are those guys that need to go to prison, right? So same thing is true with capitalism to some extent. You have healthy capitalism, so I think there has to be a qualifier in front of the word capitalism. If you're talking about black people being capitalists, and there's healthy capitalism or healthy free enterprise. I don't even know if I don't even know. I'm even grappling with the term healthy capitalism. And then there's really toxic Americanized capitalism. So if you look at big pharma and the millions of people they let die because they can't afford their medicine, that's toxic capitalism. If you look at how the FDA allows food into our ecosystem that is giving people cancer. That's toxic capitalism. If you look at our government being controlled by pimps and gangsters who are pretty much doing whatever big money tells them to do, and this isn't just Democrat or Republican now. I know Trump is just the most blatant example. He's the one that's in your face with it. He's like, yeah, I'm sitting on the stage with all these other billionaires, and we're going to decide what your life is going to look like. But this has been going on for a long time. He's just a direct, it's almost like the difference between somebody who, was selling sex quietly versus somebody who just gets an OnlyFans and just says, I'm going to do it in public, right? You're all kind of hookers. You're just, it's just you're doing it in different ways. So, long story short, I think you got to be really careful if you're black and someone says, yeah, we want to be black capitalists. You can be black, you can be wealthy, you can have free enterprise, you can have ownership and control, but you don't have to be a capitalist to do it. There are models actually that I've seen around the world. I'm gonna get back to South Park in a minute, but this is a thought, so I hope it's okay if I share this. If you go to some parts of Europe, you have countries in Europe that are very wealthy, that are doing extremely well. But you know what happens when you go to those countries? The kids all get educated because, like, you go to Finland, it ain't like Chicago public schools where 50% of the damn kids can't read, can't write, can't do math, and they're not prepared for life. You go to Finland, that doesn't happen in Finland. You go to Denmark, that doesn't happen in Denmark, but they have billionaires in Denmark too. You go to other countries, what do you find? You find that if you get sick, and you go to the doctor, you're not gonna have a medical bill that can bankrupt you. Tell me if you know what I'm talking about. Tell me, do you understand? How many of you know this? Give me a yes if you know that the number one reason for bankruptcy in America is medical issues. Right? This is why I tell you that you can't talk about building wealth without working on your health too. Because if you're not taking care of your health and if you give up your health to build your wealth, then you might as well stop building wealth. Because what's going to happen is you're going to build money in the left hand, you're going to give it all away in the right. You're gonna build a whole bunch of wealth, work yourself into an early grave, get sick, and then give all your money right back to the doctor. So you might as well not do anything. Just sit still. You're probably better off doing nothing. Do you understand? So balance is the key. Building, in fact, on the trip to Ghana, a really smart black woman was there named Althea. Althea, I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning. I'm not gonna say her last name because I got to ask permission. But Althea is super smart, and she's actually related to Marcus Garvey, which I thought was the coolest thing in the world. And anyway, she said she used a great term. She's a lawyer that was with us, and she said, "Build with balance." And I said, "That's exactly what I'm talking about. Balance. Balance is everything." And I think I was feeling extra African because I'm in Ghana, and I'm like, this is so balanced. I like the balance. Like we respect nature and life and people, but we also want to go get that money. You know what I'm saying? Oh, Althea's in the chat. She said, I'm here, Dr. Boy. See, and your last name is there, so I can go ahead and say your name is Althea Garvey now because you're commenting under your name, Althea. So there we go. All right. So yeah, Althea, I mean, she said build with balance. And I said, I like that a lot. That really summarizes I think what you want to aim for. You want to build with balance. If you think about it, anything that you build that's going to last, think about any structure you build that's going to actually work and be effective, it has to be balanced. And think about it. Can I give me a yes or no? If I build a house and it's the house is off balance, I put all the weight on one side and no weight on the other, is that going to work? Is that house going to stand? No. If I get on a seesaw and I put the fat kid on one side and the kid on the other side weighs 40 pounds, is that going to be balanced? Is that going to work? No, it's not going to work. If I get on an airplane, I got my pilot's license. Do you know one of the things we spent hundreds of hours studying? Not hundreds, maybe dozens. It's balance. They're like, look, if you get on a plane, you have to do, they had to do math. They were like, you have to measure how much weight you have and the distribution of the weight. And it's a fulcrum and it has to be set in a certain way because if you don't, then your plane is going to go up and you're going to get stuck in a certain way and you're going to go into a stall, an engine stall because you're off balance. So balance is everything. Balance is everything. And here's why I would say that you want to be really careful about terms like black capitalism. I'm not going to say reject it because it's up to you to make that decision. Also, I love John Hope Bryant, so I'm not in any way going to make it sound like I'm just arguing with his idea. But I really encourage you to just keep balance in mind. If you want to build anything that lasts, it's got to be balanced because the biggest critique of Americanized capitalism is that it's not balanced. It's not balanced. You have people that are making tons of money but they're dying early because they're stressed out. Um, Maybe we have a high per capita income, but Americanized mental health is in the toilet. All the stats show this. My wife's a therapist. The client, all the therapists, their client offices are just stacked to the rim because people are going crazy. They're stressed out. You have America has the strongest economic engine on earth. Black people are the richest group. Black Americans are the richest black people on the entire planet. But you look around here and you see a lot of crazy stuff. You see just broken families everywhere. You see lots of trauma, lots of other negative, what they, in economics they call these negative externalities. You see all these negative externalities, or it's like medicine where you have side effects from a drug. You have all these ugly side effects. So the question is, if you have a drug, and let's say the drug is capitalism, money is a drug. Professor Andrew Lowe at MIT explained how money affects your brain just like a drug. So if you get a drug at the doctor, give me a yes or no, and someone says, here's the drug that's going to make you better, but the side effects are so bad that they're going to kill you, would you take that drug? Would you want a drug that maybe, I don't know, heals your cold but gives you cancer? Yes, you wouldn't do that, right? So America is a country that's off balance. That's my point. America's off balance because capitalism has tilted the ship in a certain way, and you can see the ship sinking. You see this. You look at our debt levels as a country. They're insanely high, not sustainable. Cities are already going bankrupt. I'm looking at Chicago, and we got this black mayor. I don't understand this poor guy. I know the black people in Chicago don't seem to like him at all, and he just sits there and just smiles, but I'm like, why are you smiling? Have you seen your budget deficit, dude? You can't pay those bills. Like New York City, so many cities are going bankrupt or unable to pay their bills, and that's going to extend eventually up to the highest levels, to the government, and it's going to be every man, every woman for themselves, and also the lack of balance also will show up in the inequality. You as the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. That's only going to be accelerated through artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is the great divider that's going to divide on top of the division that already exists. So you're already living in what some have compared to like the Gilded Age, back when you had the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and the Vanderbilts, and they had all this money and all this wealth, and then they would just sort of have all these like starving children like right outside their house. You're already in that era because of big tech. You're really going to be in the era with AI. AI is already eliminating jobs. Companies don't talk about how many jobs they're taking away from AI because they don't want to upset people. So they have good language to use around it to keep people from scaring the hell out of people. But believe me, they're taking the jobs because of AI. So I think understanding AI and investing in AI is the best way to prepare for AI. You want to align your interests. They call this incentive alignment. Incentive alignment means you want to align your money, your bank account, your situation with the people that are winning. And so AI is winning. And I mentioned to you all, if you haven't picked up that list of AI stocks, just text the word stock to that number 87948, and I'll send you my list of AI stocks. And I'll even try to put it in the chat and find it. I really think investing in these AI companies is really a great long-term play, because what's going to happen is a lot of these companies are not going to they're not going to be where they are right now. Like Nvidia just became the first ever $4 trillion company. And I thought 4 trillion was a big number until I found out that most experts expect that eventually within 5 years it's going to be a $6 to $7 trillion company. So this is not a game. This is not a game. All right. So I'll find that list of AI stocks. And also, until then, what I'll do is let me grab this here. Here we go. I just found it. All right. So I'll put this in here now. And so I'll put it in the chat. So if you want to invest in AI and you want my opinion on where to put money, this is a good place to go. And so, depending on where you are, you can make that move. All right, now here's one thing I want to talk about with the South Park thing. So with the South Park thing, they signed that $1.5 billion deal, which I think they deserve because they have this really valuable intellectual property. And I was thinking about this in terms of like, okay, what can Black people learn as we engage in the B1 economic takeover of the 21st and 22nd century? What are some ways to kind of think about these sorts of things in order to really understand how this big boy, big girl money kind of works? The obvious and most interesting part of it, right, is just South Park's position in the deal. Every deal is supply demand. It's buyer seller. It's a trade. There are two sides to every deal, right? So somebody's paying the money, somebody's receiving the money. South Park's receiving this money. So if I'm a creator, I make films, I make music, I make whatever, I write articles, whatever it is I do, I'm dreaming about this kind of, I'm an author. I dream about this idea that I create something that someone will pay me massive amounts of money to create. I make a TV show, etc. I think we've got that side of the deal pretty secure. There's some basic things like, the ownership of intellectual property, extremely important. I saw Kirk Franklin, Tyler Perry, and Young Jeezy on some show. I don't know. I think it was a BET thing, and they were talking about financial stuff. And I heard Tyler say something really funny about firing his aunt, and how his aunt wouldn't come to work or something. I was like, yeah, I get what you're saying, because we talked about this, like hiring relatives and the difficulty of that. And then I heard Kirk Franklin mention something about not owning his masters until he was in his 40s. So Kirk was making a great point about the ownership of intellectual property as a key to financial prosperity. Now, that's a great point that Kirk made. Now, the only thing I wish would happen, though, a little bit more often in our community is I wish our serious conversations weren't just, being had by entertainers on TV. In addition, because the idea of sort of seeing a famous gospel singer with a famous rapper with a famous filmmaker still speaks to this idea of entertainment as a pathway for black success, which is really a failed lottery ticket for 99% of all people. And 99% of all the people that try to become a Kirk Franklin never become one. 99.9% of all the people that become try to become a Young Jeezy don't become Young Jeezy. We don't need more rappers in the black community. We need more landlords. We don't need more. We don't need more entertainers. We need more investors. And so ultimately, the idea is that even though I appreciate the conversation they were having, there are millions of people out there that understand these things who are not famous, who are not on a TV show, who are not rapping, who are not singing and dancing for white folks. And I think that's really important to understand so that we can have more of that balance we're talking about. For example, since we're on the theme of talking about Althea Garvey, see her name's Garvey because she's related to Marcus Garvey. How cool is that? I would think that our children would learn so much more talking to an Althea Garvey who's done high profile law, legal cases involving millions of dollars, then they can learn from somebody who sings and dances and raps for a living. And so our goal, for example, at the All Black National Convention is to say, who are these people that have this knowledge and expertise that can be relatable to regular people. Most people, while you can learn something from a Kirk Franklin who explains why you should own your masters if you make a gospel album, certainly, I think that that's sort of an out of touch dream for a lot of people, though. Not to say that you can't become a famous gospel singer, but everybody can't be Kirk Franklin, right? However, millions of people can be an Althea Garvey. Right? Everybody can't be a Tyler Perry, but millions of people can own shares of stock. Right? Everybody can't be a Young Jeezy, but millions of us could be landlords and own property. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? So when you talk about something that's really going to truly connect to and elevate the masses and make sure every individual who's willing and interested, everybody ain't willing to work, everybody ain't willing to learn, everybody's not willing to try. But for those who are willing to work, learn, and try, the question is, how do you tether in a positive way? I know the word tether. I learned the word tether when I saw the controversy about me going to Ghana. One day we'll talk about that. It was really interesting. A lot of people got mad at me for going to Ghana, and I was like, "Why? What did I did? How did I make? I know when I'm trying to make you mad, but I wasn't trying to make anybody mad by going to Ghana. I like Ghana. I like being African. It was weird. It was very strange. I'll talk to you about that one day. But still, though, we talk about connecting to every individual household, right? You think about it like lifting you up on a pulley. If everybody has a hook and a crane connected to their house and we're all elevating that wealth, that is a more effective model, a more effective economic model for the black community than hearing about Kirk Franklin talk about owning your masters or why billionaire Tyler Perry, had to fire his aunt. I would hope that we can systematize our economic training in a way where it's relatable to real stuff, right? So anyway, with that said, though, I appreciated the fact that Kirk brought up the ownership of his masters and how he waited until his 40s to do that. Because the South Park deal, if you look at something like this, The reason the South Park folks got all this money is because they're owners of something. They own these characters and everything else. And so many things get trademarked and patented and copywritten and everything else. I'm not an expert on any of this, but literally, I one of the guys that actually came into class one day about a year and a half ago. I got to bring him back. Is the brother that played Daryl Bell? He played Ron on A Different World. And what Daryl, and I love this guy. He's super smart. He's a great guy, and we've known each other for a long time. We have a Syracuse University affiliation, and so he loves what we do, and I love him. He's just a good human being. And one thing that he told me that really freaked me out was he told me about how the people that own the show A Different World, they just trademarked and they trademarked everything. Even Whitley's accent on A Different World is trademarked. Like, so Whitley can't use that accent without their permission. She can't even go out and say Dwayne, like she's doing it. She can't do that, right? Which is crazy. Like, so she's at an event and they say, "Hey, can you do the Whitley Gilbert imitation for us for the audience?" I don't think she can do that, right? Again, I don't know if they would sue her for that, but still they could, right? So, long story short, um, intellectual property is critically important. And if you think about, for example, times where we've blown the bag or lost our wealth opportunity, I think about hip hop, all right? And if you think about hip hop, uh, a lot of intellectual property was not protected when hip hop was being created. And so ultimately, if we had more people thinking about these sorts of things before the record labels did, then I think we would be the beneficiaries of hip hop as opposed to being the creators of the hip hop. So that side of the fence makes sense. The media infrastructure, generational IP, intellectual property can be passed down to the children, to the next generation. So, for example, the name Dr. Boyce Watkins, that's intellectual property. The Black Business School is intellectual property. The Ten Commandments of Black Economic Power is intellectual property. And these ideas, I assume, are going to be relevant 100 years from now. So I have great, great, great grandkids who will be able to be beneficiaries of these ideas that may come from these things that I've created during my lifetime, right? So ultimately, understanding intellectual property at an early age is extremely important, and I think a lot of our young people should understand that. Now, that's one side of the seesaw. Now, I'm going to move to the other side of the seesaw. Here's the other side of the seesaw, and we're actually going to talk more about this also at the All Black National Convention. In case you guys don't know, it's going to happen in August, 21st to the 23rd. Thousands of people like you are going to gather in Atlanta, and we're just planning our future. We literally are owning our entire future. And so, if you want to join us in Atlanta, just go to allblacknationalconvention.com. That's allblacknationalconvention.com. So here's the other side of that fence. It's easy to sit and have a conversation about how great it is to receive a check for $1.5 billion dollars. That's an amazing conversation. And what's also relatively easy is to have a conversation about how to secure intellectual property or your masters or your rights so that someone will write you a check for maybe not 1.5 billion, maybe it's just 1.5 million. Either way, both of those numbers are life-changing numbers. But the billion obviously is much more impactful, but most of us would be happy getting a check for 1.5 million. You're good now. Now you're safe if you're not crazy with your money. Um, the more interesting conversation, really, the big boy conversation though, is to go to the other side of that table and to say, huh, okay, so somebody just paid me $1.5 billion for my intellectual property. I think the bigger question will be, well, how much money are they making to make them write a check that big? Like people say that, I think Chris Rock said that. He said that Shaquille O'Neal is rich, but the man who writes Shaquille O'Neal's checks is wealthy. Y'all remember when he said that? So, so, so if you really want to understand just what it means to be an economic god in a capitalist society, you got to go into the owner's suite a little bit and you got to say, damn, like, why would you write a check that big? Because this is another layer of economic consciousness that's extremely important that I think could be further developed. I know a lot of people who are very eager to make money, but they're not equally eager to let go of money for the sake of making more money. See, a lot of times, like we understand this idea. You know how you go to church and they say, every dollar you get to the church, God will give it back to you tenfold. Whatever the pastor's got to say to get your money. I'm playing. I'm kidding. It's okay to tithe. I think the church deserves support. If you like your church and they're doing something for you, Why not pay the church? I mean, you went to a comedy club and you paid the comedian, so you might as well pay the pastor too. I mean, I think that's okay. He has to eat, right? So he can keep, saving your soul, replenishing your spirit. God bless him. God bless the black church when we're doing things right. Um, but here's the thing, right? Investing's kind of the same way. There are people who are only thinking about one side of the deal. And this is really what you might call the paycheck mentality. They're thinking, if I work really hard and if I create something, then you should give me a check. You should pay me for what I create. My best pathway for building wealth is to take the money I receive and hold on to it so that that money can be sustained and grow. Like that's my best economic model. But then there are people who go kind of the next step, who say, no, the best way for me to have money is not for me to hold on to every penny I get. It's for me to reinvest that money by letting go of that money under the assumption that that some percentage of that money, or maybe more than the amount I gave away, is going to come back to me. Do you understand? That's the investor mentality. So the first mentality, which is fine, which is good, it's a good start, is the saver mentality, the hoarder. Like I make money, I'm hoarding the money, therefore I have money because I've held on to my money. That's good. That's better than being a spender. I know people that let go of money and don't save nothing, right? So level zero, economic immaturity is when you get money and you spend money. The next level, maybe when you're like an economic teenager, is when you get money and you hoard money. But if you want to be a grown ass man and a grown ass woman, then you understand the next layer to that, which is I get money. Not only do I not spend it, and I do save it, but I'm also going to reinvest it. I'm going to let go of it. And here's the thing that's interesting. This was something that freaked me out when I figured it out. A lot of people don't get that. They don't understand that. And you'd be amazed how many people I meet who have a great business idea, who are working really hard on their business, but are unwilling to invest money into growing that business. Like you say, okay, you got a great product, it's a great idea. Well, what's your marketing budget? Well, I haven't thought about that. Well, how are people going to know about your products if you don't have a market? Most corporations have a marketing budget. You know that they're letting go of lots of money. And the bigger you get, the more money you make, the more you have to spend. If I showed you how much money I spend on a weekly or monthly basis, you would think that I was a rapper. You a little young Boise B. You would think I was in the strip club making it rain on everybody in the Gucci store. You would look at my credit card bill and say, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm making investments. I'm making investments. I have to learn to give as much as I receive because that is the global economic rule of reciprocity. That is basically that your money should be a boomerang, not a slingshot, right? Which means that I take calculated risks on a regular basis. I write checks on a regular basis, and I write those checks with the hope and the expectation that if I take calculated risk, that money is going to come back to me and then some. Sometimes it don't work out. Sometimes I write the check and the money never comes back. That's the hard part. That's why investing is tough. People start investing. They say, "Well, you told me that investing is going to make me money, make me rich, but I invest in this thing and it didn't work out." Of course it ain't going to work out. It's just like love. Sometimes you take the girl out and she ain't even worth dinner at Applebee's, but you had to do something. You had to make some sort of investment of time and money to explore and to determine maybe if she's worth a second date. So you kissed the frog to try to find your prince or your princess, right? You had to try. Because if you don't try, then you'll never know what's on the other side of that. So a lot of investing or a lot of economics really comes down to understanding like why would Paramount write a check that big? They're writing a $1.5 billion check because they're expecting three, four, $5 billion back. But that doesn't mean it's guaranteed. That's the other part that's confusing to people. They think that if investing works, it's supposed to work perfectly all the time. That's like going to a basketball game and watching Michael Jordan and assuming that he's going to make every single shot. Michael Jordan does not make every single shot. Michael Jordan missed more shots in his career than most players have taken in their whole career. But the reason he's Michael Jordan is because he made a lot of those shots. Do you understand? And so really, in terms of the South Park thing, I think it's really important for our kids to really learn not just how to sign the back of a check and cash it, but also why would you sign the front of the check? Because the power in America isn't in the hands of the people that sign the back of the check. The power is in the hands of the people that sign the front of the check. because they're the ones getting the ROI. They're the ones who are getting the return on investment. They're the ones who typically own everything, control the means of production. These are the ones who typically win in a capitalist society. So make sure your kids understand why you let go of money so that you can get more later on. It's not just money. It might be time, it might be effort or whatever. In fact, I remember when I was in college and I finished college, it was my like last day of school, my senior year, and I talked to a friend of mine, a very nice lady. She's very pretty. She's an AKA. AKAs are smart. My sister's an AKA. And we were talking about what we were going to do after college, and I said, so what are you going to do? She said, oh, I'm going to go get a job. And she said, "What are you going to do?" I said, I'm going to go to grad school." I was actually going to go to IU, and I taught there for a little bit. And she said, "I said, so really, so what? So what's making you go get this job?" And she said, "Well, I like money." She said, "I like money too much not to get a job." And I said, and she said, "Well, why are you going to grad school?" I said, "Well, I like money too much not to go to grad school." Right? And so we both had the same goal. The goal was get money because we were both broke, but we had two different ways of looking at it. In my view, she was playing checkers. My goal was to play chess. My goal was to add, it's sorry, AK, it's not AK, it's AKA Helen, AKA Alpha Kappa Alpha. Um, and so ultimately, I would encourage you to teach the kids to play chess, not checkers. And chess, economic chess, involves a lot more delayed gratification. It involves a little bit more risk taking. It involves a willingness to let go of resources so you can have more later on. And you're not letting it go because you want to let it go. You're letting it go because you're expecting more later. So, like, even when I was in college and I would study all the time, people would say, "Well, why do you study all the time? You're not having any fun." And I said, "No, I'm studying hard now because I want to have fun for the rest of my life." If all you're doing is going to parties, you're going to have fun for about 4 years and then you're going to suffer for the rest of your life. I'm going to struggle for the next 4 years, but I'm going to have fun for the next 40 years. Right. So really, ultimately, that's the investor mentality. And that's something that has to be taught to kids. I think kids should be taught about intellectual property, about ownership, all these other things. Hard work is extremely important, but also working smart really matters as well when you're talking about building wealth and economics. So when I saw this deal with South Park, I said, "Man, this is so crazy. I didn't know that there was that much money in streaming." And that's an opportunity for us, right? Because think about this: who's better at entertainment than Black people? Think about it. It makes absolutely no sense for you to be the most entertaining people on the planet, uh, and not have no money. It really comes down to understanding how ownership works and how intellectual property works, how distribution systems work, how the money actually gets made. And that should be taught in every single Black household in America. Every B1 Black first household should be talking to their kids about these sorts of things, these economic systems. If you need help with that, we do have a whole Black business school for children. The website is blackmillionairesoftomorrow.com. So feel free to go to blackmillionairesoftomorrow.com. We also have, I did a training called How to Turn Your Child into a Millionaire. And that website is kiddieboss.com, Kiddie, kiddieboss.com. And you can feel free to take a look at that. And of course, we have our financial flashcards and workbooks for kids. So you can go to drboycebooks.com to take a look at that. I know there's a lot of websites, but you can pick whichever one works for you. So drboycebooks.com, and feel free to take a look at that. All right. So the last thing I'll mention before we head out is next year. I mentioned we are going to go to Ethiopia. Our trips sell out pretty fast, and because we keep the group small, because I don't really want to take 1,000 people at a time. I like the intimacy of it. But if you'd like to go with us on that next trip, just text the word travel to the phone number 87948. If you text travel to 87948, I'll send you information as soon as we get information about our next trip. And I'll probably make some little mini trips. My goal, actually, I was so inspired by the time I spent. It's funny. I've been to Africa a few times. I've been to Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Botswana, and I think that's it. Oh, in Egypt. We went to Egypt last year as a group. And every single time, I don't know if anybody else has felt that's this way, but every time I go to Africa, I come back just a different person. It's like, oh gosh, I feel alive here. There's something here. Just going to the airport, getting on the plane, and I was in first class. My wife, I got a bougie wife. She likes to ride. She likes to be comfortable. And in the first class, it was nothing but Black people in first class. Just that experience alone is different from the black experience in America. And then when you get there, I think it was 4 days before I saw a white person. And I don't hate white people at all. I never have. I don't want to hate nobody. But it was crazy. It was like, man, I didn't know that. I think I'm addicted to white people. I just I didn't, what's going on right now? And so I would say that every black person should have a passport. Every black person should just be able to hop over to Africa, just check it out. And the hard part is that there are so many people. I had my big crazy experience this week was I went on Twitter and I saw that because I had been sharing stuff on Twitter from the trip, and my friend hit me up. Her name's Jade Arundel. She's been my friend for about 10 years. And she said, "Yeah, doc, they're talking about you and if you going to Ghana and and they're having this big debate about it." I said, "What is there to debate? Like, I don't understand." And apparently there is a movement that I agree with called pro-delineation. And pro-delineation focuses on this idea that Black Americans have to delineate ourselves to make it clear that we're not just that all Black people are not the same, so that we can make clear, direct arguments for things like reparations and stuff like that, or even leadership or whatever, right? And because here's what happens is because African Americans or Black people in America, Black Americans, whatever you want to call it, because we have a bone to pick, we have a 400-year beef with America, with white people, with the government. They choose not to deal with us in many cases. So what a lot of times they'll do in leadership is they will put a black person in front of you, but it'll be like a black person from another country, or it'll be a black person who never had a black American experience, and they'll say this is your new leader. And there are people who say, yeah, we respect this person, but that person cannot relate to my experience. Like even Barack Obama, I know a lot of y'all love him and whatever, and I'm not here to criticize him, but Barack Obama, if you read his background very carefully, it wasn't sort of like that typical black experience. Michelle, now Southside Chicago, that definitely adds value. But or even with Kamala Harris, it's like, yeah, but she married Dougie, and she's also, she's kind of she got the Indian stuff, and daddy's Jamaican. Jamaican's cool, nothing wrong with Jamaica, but that's not Black American, right? And because I can tell you for a fact that when you are Black American and you're rooted in a Black American experience, I believe America is afraid of you. I believe that they know you have good reason to have issues with them. And also I can tell you that as a Black American man married to a Black American woman, the only benefits, the only white privilege my wife got on her job is that she's light skinned. But she's a black girl from Gary, Indiana, all black teachers, all that stuff, right? So, but yeah, but she's high yellow, and that actually made a difference. Like they treated her differently, and on her job, and the only time that they started to treat her poorly was when she aligned herself with black men. There was a black man on her job that was going through all kinds of hell, and she stood up for him, and then suddenly the performance reviews changed, the attitude changed. They just started doing things that such that I believe if she wanted to sue, she probably could. She just hasn't done it. And then when she married me, that also was a strike against her to some extent because of what I do and who I am, right? So my point is to say that I agree with the pro-delineation argument, but at the same time, though, I think that we have to really sort of think about the importance of strategic alliances as a key to Black wealth and power. I said, I am pro delineation as long as pro delineation is not pro isolation. I said, you do not want to, if you're trying to achieve economic power, you don't want to become North Korea. You don't want to isolate from your natural allies. You don't want to disconnect. You can be who you are and still have relationships with others, healthy relationships with other entities, even white people. There's not a lot of you all work well with white folks. There's nothing wrong with that. Why go do that? But when you also know who you are, it keeps you from being swept away like these weirdos in Hollywood that come back doing all kinds of stuff that black people don't even understand, because they get too caught up in the culture, right? So I as a black man who was determined to marry a black woman who clearly delineates myself as a person who has a Black American experience. I also love going to Ghana and Africa because Africa is the wealthiest continent on the planet. It's going because it has so many young people. Africa is going to dominate financially over the next 100 years, and I want my legacy. I want my descendants to be a part of that. I want them to be introduced to that. I want them to be able to fly to Africa as easily as they can fly to Detroit. I want them to be able to go to Kenya as easily as they can go to Atlanta. And because here's the deal. When I'm in Ghana, again, Ghana, when I was in Nigeria, when I was in other places, it wasn't like I ran into a bunch of people who didn't have something in common with me. Yes, they're different. Yes, they have their own cultures and habits and norms. Yes, there's variation in terms of how different people might respond to you. But when I was in Ghana, I definitely felt a whole lot more love than I might feel in Mississippi. And so I think that as Black people, uh, getting outside of the country, it helps you breathe a little bit better. We've talked about that word options and how important the word options is. Options are everything. Options are power. Options always have a non-negative value. This is mathematically true. You're always better off when you have more options. So Africa gives you options, and it's not just an option. It's a powerful economic option. Black American people are the richest people, richest Black people on the planet. The 1.7 trillion that we spend every year is bigger than the gross domestic product of the six richest African countries combined. The richest African country is South Africa. Their gross domestic product is $400 billion. We spend four times that amount in a year. So they have direct interest in wanting to align with us, and I think that they understand the assignment. Africa is going to be the richest continent on the planet, largely because they have more young people than every other continent. Almost every other continent, especially in the West and in Asia, they're all dying. They're dying because they don't value family the way we do. A lot of people have traded in family for student loans, corporate jobs, raises, and promotions. And so as a result of that, the productivity rate, the reproductive rate has been much lower. Most African families, two things that tend to happen in Africa, not to generalize. One, families are really important. Relationships are important. When I was there, I saw Ghanaian shop owners hooking up their siblings and saying, "Hey, this is my sister's shop. Hey, go to my brother's shop." That kind of thing. But then also they have lots of kids. They have six to eight kids. They didn't listen when Bill Gates was telling everybody not to have kids. The African people didn't listen, and I think that was smart. So as a result of that, you're talking about a continent that's the most resource rich continent on the entire planet. And also, it's one of its greatest resources is its people. Massive amounts of productivity come from having all these human beings that are ready and willing to work hard. So, long story short, I think that the alignment of Black American people and African people it's the ultimate power couple. It's incredibly important, and it's something that we can do while still delineating and being clear with the American government. Hey, look, don't just put any blackface in front of me and tell me that that person is just like me because we have a different experience and we have a bone to pick with you. You owe us $14.7 trillion for what you've done to us, and that's and counting. That there's interest on top of that, so that number goes up every year for what you've done to us. And we know where the money's at. The money's out there. It's not in your government per se. Some of it is, but most of that money is in the pockets of your corporations that benefited from us. It's in the pockets of your universities and institutions. So they should be paying up too. It's even in the pockets of your churches. The Catholic Church played a big role in the enslavement of Black people. They co-signed on that. They gave the religious and moral justification for enslaving people. So you go to the slave dungeon, and I think it's Elmina. Is that what it's called? Yeah, where they had the slave dungeon on underground and the church on top of the slave dungeon. How demonic is that? That's crazy. And so, with that being said, I would encourage you to pick your battles. Right? When you're talking about who you want to have a beef with and not. Some people you can't beef with everybody. And the reason trauma is it's important to eliminate trauma and to heal is because that's what traumatized people do. Because you've been hurt so bad and you're so mad, you're like that little dog who bites everybody. And if that dog is biting everybody, including the hand that feeds him, then that dog's going to just starve to death and die. So don't be the dog that bites every hand that feeds you. Heal, grow, learn, think through your ideas so that you can be real clear. Like, okay, I don't agree with you completely, but I'm not going to fight with you because there's not much benefit. The costs outweigh the benefits. But this person over here, oh yeah, we got a problem, and I'm going to focus on you, right? That way you can win more of these battles as opposed to everything just being a big old fight, right? So anyway, that's my thought on that, and I hope that that helps in terms of how to sort of process some of this. Again, this is just my perspective. You can have whatever opinion like that. All right. So anyway, I'm gonna let you guys go. Don't forget, if you want to be on the text list to be notified when we start class, text the word morning to the number 87948. Text morning to 87948. Also, if you want to, I have a book called Financial Lovemaking. In case you want to, if you're interested in how money and relationships work, you can get it for free, the e-copy, by going to boyceandalicia.com. And that's one thing that me and my wife love to talk about, is how money and relationships work together, so people would stop having these stupid arguments about whether or not you should take somebody to the Cheesecake Factory on the first date. It's much deeper than that, and I think that we got to stop with these first grader relationship conversations and start hearing from people that are really experts in these topics that can really help us. For example, if you want to know about marriage, you should probably talk to a married person instead of talking to some single person who sounds good on the internet. And also remember, there are scientists in your own community who can tell you exactly, precisely, exactly what you need to do to have a healthy relationship, to have a healthy life, to be happy, to be successful, to win financially, all these other things. And so we have to kind of do that a little bit more instead of just listening to people because they sound good. Make sure that the advice is actually good. So anyway, that's it. Have a good day, everybody.